Okay, so today we're going to be changing the front discs and pads on a 2016 Audi S8 Plus. This one is the one with the 400mm discs, Brembo brake system. We're going to need quite a few things to do this job properly. Obviously we're going to start with a disc. This is an OE disc. I recommend for this application that you just really use OE discs. Other components that you're going to need is brake pads. I got Brembo brake pads. The system is made by Brembo, so the pads will be very good. I got a new retainer spring. This is really expensive, 70 to 80 pounds, which is just nuts. We got anti-vibration shims. A lot of people don't put those on, probably because, again, they're costing sometimes close to 200 pounds depending on what you do with the dealer. We got new bolts for the caliper carrier. We got a new sensor. Sensor is aftermarket. I mean, effectively this is literally just a wire running through it, so there's no point paying the Audi premium for that. We got a 30 Torx for the disc bolt. We got a little screwdriver to help us mount and take things off. We got a 21mm socket for these bolts here, flathead screwdrivers, a couple of torque wrenches. You need to have one that goes up to 200 Newton meters, little torque wrench for the disc bolt, and a brake pad spreader, little tool to take the caps off, and a socket for the wheels. Other things that you'll need, obviously a rag, some lithium grease, and the rest is optional, but I'll take you through what I do anyway. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is put the car in wheel change mode. So turn on the ignition, go to the car menu, we go into car systems, do servicing and checks, and put your air suspension in wheel change mode. So you just do that and then turn the ignition back off. So we got the car set in jacking mode on the inside. We just want to make sure that we put it underneath the jack point here, which is this plastic thing that you see there. So I'm going to put my jack on and then put the car up in the air and take the wheel off. Let's start with that real quick. Alright, next thing we need to do is we need to turn it. So if you're working on the driver's side on the UK car, you want to turn the steering wheel left so that you can easily access everything. Things to note: don't undo this bolt, don't undo that unless you're planning to replace them. Can be reused. That one, I don't think Audi sells it separately, so you need to reuse that then entirely at your own risk. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to loosen this bolt over there, and the same at the bottom, that bolt's over there. That's a 21mm socket that you'll need for that. Okay. And we're just going to loosen this up. I don't want to take it out all the way yet. There we go, same on the bottom. We want to have a little bit of moving space as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the sensor and we're going to loosen this brake hose as well. First the brake hose, which just slides straight back. Nope, it slides straight up, sorry. There we go. So that's loose there. Then the sensor is this. Let's show you a little bit better. Sensor is there, so the plug needs to come off the other end, and then we're going to take this off. Okay, so I'm going to wedge my screwdriver in there a little bit, give that a bit of pressure, and then from the other side that just comes off. This one here, it's got like a tab on, and that tab is to lock it in place to twist it off. Let me just wedge the screwdriver under there. Okay, I don't mind that that's broken off because I'm going to replace that anyway, but obviously that plastic's quite a bit brittle. I can't twist that by hand right now, so I'm just going to get some pliers to twist that real quick. So we're twisting that 90 degrees, and then that should come off. There we go. Okay, so let's get the caliper off. In fact, what we're going to do first is we're going to spread these pads a little bit so the caliper can go over the lip that's on the disc. So if I just... These pads have some counterweights, so they're the perfect place to wedge a screwdriver in between without risking to damage anything that actually matters. So let me put the camera back a bit so you can see me take it off and hang it up safely. Okay, so I'm going to be hanging it up with these hooks. They're really cheap off eBay, pack of 20 or something like that for a couple of quid. Doesn't have any springs hanging on. We're going to hang it on the upper control arm. So let's undo these bolts real quick. These bolts, by the way, have to be replaced. I would really recommend following manufacturer's guidelines on these brakes. You know, it is a heavy car. Most of the braking is done by the front brakes, and it's also really quick, so good combination to drive, but you want to make sure you got the brakes to stop it as well. You see I didn't pull the pads quite as far apart as I would have liked for the lip, but alright, so let's get this hooked on the carrier itself like that, and hang it on this hook over here. Okay, so we're just going to leave that to the side for now, out of the way, and I'm going to focus on the disc. Okay, so for the disc, pretty straightforward. We just have to loosen this one. The disc will lift off. And this bolt is cheap to replace as well, so you might as well do it if you have it to hand. There we go. Disc is off. Okay, disc run out is something you got to be really careful on this size of contraption. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the hub a quick clean with my hub grinder. This is a Hazard one. Love this tool. It makes the job so much easier and so much more thorough. Okay. So just got to make sure that there's nothing on the surface. And it's clean like that. So hope you can see that it's completely clean now, which is a great surface for the disc. Okay, the OE disc, you just want to clean off the coating on it. You don't want to scrape it or sand it or anything like that. And you use methylated spirits or commercial brake cleaner, it says. So we just get the spray cleaner, wipe off that layer. This is aluminium, this is steel, so careful on how you handle this. You don't want to damage that. So I'm putting it on a piece of cardboard there. Clean the inside really well as well. That's the mating surface. Alright, that's that. Now let's get it on the car. Okay, so we made sure this surface is clean. I've cleaned everything else up a little bit. Let's put this on. Careful with it. Make sure it's properly seated. Line up the hole. through that. Okay, this is 10 Newton meters. There we go. So not very tight at all. Just another quick wipe. Okay, so let's get the pads off. Put this forward a bit, closer to us. So the first thing we want to do before we actually take them off is spread them out, right? And make sure that the pistons are completely compressed. It's easier to do with the old pads on. A, don't worry about damaging them, not that you would if you use the right tools. B, it's going to be way easier than having to individually push them all back, which just takes time and you might move things independently. So it's always just a better idea to do it with one of these tools. So slide this in there. Okay. There we go. And because they're still on the guide pins, everything will just go really, really straight. So this shouldn't take too much effort at all. See, this is quite a smooth job. You'll feel it when it's done, as it gets stuck like that. You don't want to over tighten them, you're not trying to tighten them. So you just loosen it until this drops out, and that's that done. So to get them out, I don't know if you can see that, but there's guide pin there, there, and there. And then the spring is in place to basically provide the tension on the guide pins, and we need to move them off them to come out this way. So let's turn it around real quick, make sure we don't put any kinks in. So you can see here a little bit better what that looks like. You got the guide pins there, and we're just going to slide them off there. Easier said than done sometimes. Okay, be careful. So you notice that this fell off, which doesn't help. Let's just hang that bad boy back, and just let's use one of these. Doesn't hurt them, you know. You're gonna remove them anyway, and it's a plastic hammer, so nothing bad's gonna happen with that. There. Interesting again, they just weren't very well mounted, these things. They don't have the vibration pads on them, which is again quite worrying. So let's do the same on this end. I'm not worried about the sensor breaking, and in this case if you are, you just can do a little bit more careful, I guess. The most important thing is you don't want to damage the paint on the caliper. Well, that's the most important thing for me anyway. So let's just take that out. There we go. So let's have a quick look at this. And we're going to start actually cleaning things up a little bit so that we have everything nice and clean for when we start work on this. So to clean that up, use some brake cleaner and that. In fact, I'm going to take this spring off as well because we're replacing that. So you just pull that off. So two things with these springs is they're, you know, very hard metal. So they can get tired and break. This can get worn out. For myself, typically I would only do it every other replacement. On this one, sort of a little bit unknown, so I just started with the assumption that I would do everything properly. So let me clean that up a little bit with a copper brush and some brake cleaner, and then we can start with the mounting procedure. Just real quick before I start cleaning, I've actually decided to leave the disc off. Just think it's going to be a little bit easier. We don't have a load of space there, and I know for actually getting the pads in there we're going to want as much space as we can because it can be a real pain. So I'm just going to brush them up now and then I'll be back. So now that we've done that, we're going to put a small amount of lithium grease on this surface here, 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 and on the guide pins themselves as well. So as you can see here, there's just a tiny little amount of lithium grease there, just to slightly cover up that area. You really want to be sparing on this. Okay, so vibration pads, you need one pack. They're made by Brembo in Italy. So these clip into the caliper holes themselves. These are an adhesive backing. You need to peel the plate off once it's on there. If you don't want to buy these, because they are very expensive for whatever reason, I think they can come as close to £200 or something like that, which is just crazy. If you already have them on your pads, some people carefully wedge them off. They won't be as sticky anymore, so it's kind of up to you what you want to do with that. I mean, these aren't cheap cars, and the parts and supplies won't be cheap either. I think if this were a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or even an Audi R8, you would hope that people would take the same care and attention as you would on these cars, because you know the performance isn't that far off, and it's typically much heavier. So these brakes see some serious action. Alright, so just clipped in like that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take it off the hook and I'm going to put it flat on something, and then we're going to mount a spring in there. We're going to peel the backs off these things, and we're going to start putting the pads in, which can be a little bit of a pain, but let's see how it goes. Okay, so let's take this off. That's something that's, you know, about the height of the bottom of the car. The reason I want to do that is because I know I'm going to have to put a lot of pressure to get the pads in, to get it on this new spring, you know, which is designed to create a lot of tension. So if you want to try pushing this while it's floating, then you're just going to have one hand too short while you're doing this. So if we put it on here, make sure it's something solid that you can really press down on. It'll make life a lot easier. So let's get that off. Just make sure this guide. Put it on there. Still, you know, quite loose, so not too much tension on there. You do want to look after that. There we go. Okay, so let's get this spring on there. Okay, so if you look at the caliper itself, you've got a cut in there and a cut in there, right? And this basically clips over the edge like such, right? So just make sure that that's, in fact, I am going to take this out because that's just going to be in my way. So there, let me just take the two off for now. No harm done. This is really tight. Is that going to slide over it? No chance. Okay. So I'm going to use a little screwdriver to help me just get that over the ridge. So I'm applying. Oh, I can do that anyway. Good. Great. So that's in place. Clicks in nice and solid. That one back there. That one back there. Sit confidently. Okay. So now we are at the stage of putting the brake pads on, which means we have to remove the backing. So I'm just going to use a little screwdriver, get in between there, just push it off. 1, 2, 3. Move you guys a bit. 6. Okay, let's get the brake pads. So we got our brake pads here. They're all the same, right? So they can be used in any which position, upside down, whatever. The holes for the sensors is in every single one of the pads, so you don't have to worry about that. Typically the first one will go in a lot easier on these sort of systems with springs, because the spring can topple a little bit. Because there's going to be an adhesive on here, you just want to make sure that this is nice and clean. So again, I'm going to spray some brake cleaner on there, wipe that off real quick. Okay, let's get the first pad in there. Hope the camera position is okay. The light's shining right on the car and it's making it hard to get the right light balance going. Okay, so principle here is match up the holes with the guide pins. Alright, you don't have to do it this way, this is just because I got the camera where it is. Up there, and then we're going to push this down over the hole. That didn't work. Let's try that again. So we got the top hole just in, and then we'll push that down. There we go. That's sitting in there now. Okay. So like I said, first one tends to be the easier one. The second one, not so much. So we're gonna have to get a little bit creative with that. Let's wipe that off. Okay. So let's see. Oh, helps if I put it in the right way. So let's just get it in position first, and let's see then what we gotta be doing. Okay, there is a temptation if you look at it. I don't know what you can see there. Okay, so the spring, you know, has like a straight edge in the middle. You might want to take the brake pad and you put it in front of the straight edge. If you do that, you're sort of painting yourself in a corner. It's going to be really hard to slide it over there because it's not like a smooth edge that you can do it. So you really have to go on top of the thing and push the spring down. If you don't do that, you just think you're making progress, but actually you're not. So just enter there. Let's have a quick look. Come on, you. Okay. So we've got the first pin in there, and we're pushing down. Okay, that looks pretty positive. Let's just move this a bit and have a look at where we really are. So you see the top pin not in there yet. I'm gonna have to push that down a little bit more. So let's carefully put that down and keep pushing. Okay, again, not working, so I'm just going to use a screwdriver to help me with that. So let's hold this thing so you see the just want to lever this to help me effectively push it down more. Okay, that's oh no, it is in there. Awesome. Cool. So that's on there. Just got to be super careful that you don't damage the caliper or anything like that. So next thing you want to do after that is you want to make sure that your spring is seated correctly. There's a bit of a visual or an optical illusion going on. This doesn't sit straight in relation to this, it sits straight in relation to the brake pads. There's like a curve on there, so just make sure everything is nicely in place, which it is. Good. So now we can go and put our brake disc back on and then we'll just slide that right on there and tighten everything up. So let's get that done. Okay, so you've already seen me do it, but you just see me do it twice. Put this bad boy on, make sure it's all the way across on the surface. Get the little screw in place. Get that hand tight. And 10 Newton meters. Right. Make sure your pads are well seated. This is all in good shape. Keep your new bolts to hand. Just carefully. And then that just slides right over. Okay, that sits on there nicely. Take the bolt in the hole and slide up. One. Find the hole. There we go. Make sure that's all good mixed till the up is. And let's just use a ratchet real quick. Tight, and then we'll finish that off with a torque wrench. Got to torque this up to 196. 70, 96. Let's find our first bolt. Down for this. Make sure it's well seated. So 196. Okay, click. It's tempting to make it tighter because you can. Don't forget your, there's a lot of aluminium componentry here, so you just want to just stick to whatever the torque number is there. Okay, 196. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to fix our sensor again. New sensor, if you look at it, it's got a thicker bit on one side, like above the copper clip, as opposed to the other. It goes in like this so that the wire points away from the outside of the car. Got a little space in there. Just put that and push it down till it clicks into place. We're gonna root it properly this time. Careful when you use screwdrivers to do this, you don't want to rip anything. So we're gonna, if you look at this piece here, that's what we're gonna put in there and just clip it back on. Okay, so put it in there, slide it like that, and twist. Okay, twist that in place, good. That's well positioned, and then we just take it and slide the plug, just hang it in place over there until it clicks into place. And then what's left here is put the brake line mount back on there. There we go. That's that back in place. So torque that up, we torqued that up. That's back in place. The electric's all running nicely. So let's get everything straightened up and mount the wheel back on. Carefully mount it. That. Hole. Again, I only hand tighten these to start with. I never use the impact wrench for that. Just want to make sure everything is well seated. Everything is going to be torqued nicely. You don't have any surprises because just being on the edge, the wheel is not perfectly straight or whatever sort of thing. So take your time on these. It doesn't help that these wheels are, again, if you damage it, not cheap. Or even worse, if you don't notice it because you've completely surrendered all the control to the impact wrench, you might not seat it properly and you'll have the consequences of that as well. Okay, so this is nicely. So these are 120. Okay. So 120, and you tighten them in a cross pattern. That's all of them done. So there's our car. And we'll just recheck them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Let's get the caps on. 3, 4. There's 1, 5. There we go. That's the job done. Now you need to get in the car, press on the brake a couple of times, and then go and check the brake fluid. I checked it in advance. You want to do that. If you don't do that, you might have had a service technician, or in the past you topped it up because you saw it getting a little bit lower. If you then push back your brakes and you just topped it off all the way, you run the risk of it overflowing, which obviously you don't want to do. So then you need to bed in the brakes. So first thing you want to do is just for a little while drive slowly, just so you know you don't ingest any heat in there, but you get rid of the layers. So don't go over, like, I don't know, 20 miles an hour or something like that, or even 30 miles an hour. Slowly brake, nothing drastic or hard. Then once the layer is worn off, you want to take it on the road where you can get up to about sort of 35-40 miles an hour. And then, you know, you get up to that speed, you slow down for about 3 seconds, moderate to medium. You drive on for, you know, maybe like half a mile or just over half a mile, and then you do the same thing again, maybe 5 to 10 times, but every time in between you want to give it a chance to cool down again. You get lots of these people sort of, you know, betting in race things or whatever. You want to gradually heat up everything. You want to clear the layer, and you want to create a transfer between the pad and the discs. And then for the next say 150 miles or so, you just take it easy. But you definitely want to do the bedding in first, because then you can sort of normally operate it, even though the braking performance will be slightly reduced in the first couple of 100 miles. Okay, so good luck with it. So I hope this was useful, and you know, give feedback in the comments. Always happy to hear you guys' thoughts.